The kiss lasted maybe 3 seconds, long enough for every person in that restaurant to ignore it politely, and long enough to destroy 10 years of my life. My wife's hand stayed on her boss's chest after she pulled away, her fingers smoothing the lapel of the suit like she belonged there, like she had done it 100 times before. I was already moving before I realized I'd stood up. The chair scraped hard against the floor behind me. My vision tunneled so sharply that the entire restaurant disappeared, except for 2 people in the corner booth and the black dress I had bought for my wife 3 months earlier. I was halfway across the room when a stranger grabbed my arm and whispered, "Stay calm if you want to survive what happens next." Her grip wasn't strong, because it needed to be. It was strong, because she knew exactly how much pressure it took to stop a man seconds away from ruining his own life. I turned toward her, breathing hard, fury boiling so violently through my chest I could barely hear the jazz music playing overhead. She looked maybe late 40s, dark hair tied back tight, sharp cheekbones, navy coat buttoned all the way to the throat. No makeup except lipstick the color of dried wine. But it was her eyes that stopped me. Gray, steady, eyes that had watched terrible things without blinking. "Let go of me," I said. "No," she answered calmly, "because if you walk over there right now, your wife wins." Across the restaurant, my wife Samantha laughed at something her boss whispered into her ear. Samantha Hayes, 38 years old, my wife of 10 years. The woman who once cried in my arms because we couldn't afford a honeymoon after our wedding. The woman who kissed another man on our anniversary while texting me she was stuck at work. I felt something crack inside me so violently, it almost made me dizzy. "Who are you?" I asked. The woman reached into her coat pocket and slid a black business card into my hand. Veronica Vale, corporate intelligence consultant. No logo, no company address, just a phone number embossed in silver. "Sit down, Mr. Hayes," she said quietly. "Your wife's affair is only the surface of the problem." That sentence hit harder than the kiss. I don't know why. Maybe because betrayal I understood. Affairs happen every day. But the way she said problem made it sound larger, darker, like my marriage had accidentally wandered into something dangerous. I sat down slowly at my table near the window. My untouched anniversary dinner sat in front of me growing cold under candlelight. Veronica sat across from me while my wife celebrated with another man 20 feet away. "Your wife is having an affair with Richard Mercer," she said, CEO of Mercer Biotech. I looked back toward the corner booth. Mid-50s, expensive silver watch, hair too perfect to be natural. The kind of man who smiled like he'd never heard the word no in his entire life. I figured out the affair part myself. I muttered. Veronica ignored the comment. "Richard Mercer is under federal investigation." My stomach tightened instantly. For what? Insider trading, fraud, corporate theft. And your wife is directly connected. Every sound in the restaurant seemed to disappear. "You're lying." I wish I were. She reached into her leather folder and slid a photograph across the table. Samantha stepping out of Mercer's penthouse hotel downtown. Time-stamped, 2 weeks earlier. Another photo followed. Samantha entering a private bank building with Mercer. Then another. Samantha carrying folders into Mercer Biotech after midnight. "How long?" I asked quietly. "The affair? Approximately 16 months. 16 months. Longer than I'd feared. Long enough to poison every memory I had left. Suddenly the last year replayed in fragments inside my head. The late meetings, weekend conferences, her sudden obsession with privacy, the way she angled her phone away whenever I entered the room, the expensive perfume she claimed came from work bonuses, the distance in bed, the silence at breakfast. 16 months. I felt humiliated by how completely I had missed it. Veronica leaned closer. "Listen carefully, Daniel. Because what happens in the next hour determines whether you walk away destroyed or whether they do. My name is Daniel Hayes, 42 years old, licensed electrician, owner of Hayes Electrical Services outside Richmond, Virginia. I spent 20 years building a life with my hands, wiring schools, office buildings, apartment complexes, honest work, good work, the kind where if something breaks, you fix it instead of pretending it never happened. I believe marriage worked the same way. Turns out I was wrong. Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because Richard Mercer made a mistake," Veronica answered, "and your wife helped him make it." She pulled out one final document. Bank transfers. Monthly deposits into Samantha's personal account. $20,000 every month for over a year. My throat went dry. "What is this?" "Payments," Veronica said calmly. For loyalty. I stared at the numbers. $20,000. Again and again and again. Over $300,000 hidden from me during our marriage. No. Your wife wasn't just sleeping with him, Veronica continued. She was helping him move company money through shell accounts connected to overseas investments. I looked at Samantha again. She was smiling while my entire reality collapsed around me. How do you know all this? Veronica's expression hardened slightly. Because I used to work for the FBI Financial Crimes Division, and because Richard Mercer destroyed someone I care about. Ah, there it was. Revenge. I recognized it immediately, because suddenly I felt it too. Cold, focused, dangerous. What you want from me? I asked. Nothing tonight except patience. She glanced toward Mercer's table. In exactly 23 minutes, Richard Mercer will leave this restaurant with your wife and head to the Ashford Grand Hotel downtown. My team is already there documenting everything. Your team, 3 investigators, 2 attorneys, 1 federal contact, waiting for confirmation. I stared at her. Jesus Christ. Richard Mercer believes he's untouchable, Veronica said softly. Men like him always do. Wealth makes people careless. Affairs make them stupid. She slid another photo toward me. Mercer kissing Samantha outside a hotel. Tonight ends him. I should have walked across that restaurant. Any normal man would have. Any husband watching his wife betray him on their anniversary would have exploded. But Veronica's voice had changed something. Because suddenly this wasn't just heartbreak anymore. It was war. Across the room, Samantha checked her phone and smiled softly at whatever she saw. Probably the message she planned to send me later. Another lie wrapped in hearts and apologies. What happens if I stay calm? I asked quietly. Veronica leaned back slightly. Then 6 months from now, your wife and her lover will lose everything. I looked at the lilies sitting beside me. White stargazer lilies. Samantha's favorite flowers since college. I had spent $40 on them that afternoon, thinking they still meant something. Now they look like funeral flowers. Maybe they were. Because sitting there in that restaurant, watching my wife kiss another man while a stranger explained how deep the betrayal truly went, I realized my marriage had already died long before I walked through those doors tonight. And the woman I loved had helped bury it. I didn't leave the restaurant. That's the part people usually don't understand when I tell the story now. They think rage should explode immediately. That betrayal should look loud. Screaming, broken glasses, men throwing punches across white tablecloths while strangers pretend not to stare. But rage that deep doesn't explode right away. Sometimes it freezes. Sometimes it becomes something colder and far more dangerous. I sat there with Veronica Vale across from me while my wife fed lies to another man 20 feet away. And for the first time in my adult life, I stopped reacting emotionally and started thinking strategically. Veronica checked her watch. They'll leave in approximately 12 minutes. You sound very sure of yourself. Because Mercer follows patterns, she said calmly. Affairs are routines disguised as spontaneity. Same hotel, same wine, same driver, same lies. Men like him think repetition is sophistication. I looked toward Samantha again. She was leaning forward listening to Mercer speak, her fingers tracing circles along the rim of her champagne glass. Comfortable, relaxed, completely unaware that her entire world was about to split open beneath her feet. The terrifying part wasn't that she looked guilty. It was that she looked happy. How long have you been investigating them? I asked. 5 months officially. Longer unofficially. And your interest in Mercer is personal? Veronica's jaw tightened slightly. My younger brother worked for Mercer Biotech. Senior financial analyst. 34 years old. Smart. Honest. The kind of man who still believed executives followed laws. She paused briefly. When the SEC investigation started quietly last year, Mercer needed someone to blame for missing money. My brother discovered irregular transfers connected to offshore accounts. 2 weeks later, he was fired for misconduct he didn't commit. Jesus. 3 months after that, he put a gun in his mouth. The words landed between us like concrete. Veronica didn't cry when she said it, didn't shake. That somehow made it worse. I'm sorry, I said quietly. Don't be, she answered. Just understand that the people at that table destroy lives for convenience. Across the restaurant, Mercer laughed loudly at something Samantha said. I suddenly hated the sound of her voice. Veronica continued. After my brother died, I started digging. Mercer wasn't just stealing money from investors. He was laundering company funds through fake consulting contracts and shell corporations. Your wife became part of that system about 14 months ago. Because of the affair? At first, probably. Then greed took over. She slid another document across the table. Wire transfers, property records, purchase receipts, designer bags, jewelry, a luxury SUV leased entirely under Samantha's name. Your wife's salary is $84,000 annually, Veronica said. But over the last year, she spent nearly $400,000. My stomach twisted violently. I thought her company gave bonuses. Veronica gave me a look almost sympathetic. Daniel, your wife has been living a second life. That sentence hit harder than every photo combined, because suddenly dozens of tiny moments clicked together in my mind like breakers snapping into place. Samantha suddenly locking bathroom doors, the secretive smiles at her phone, the weekend retreats, the expensive lingerie she stopped wearing around me, the emotional distance that had become permanent sometime last spring. I remembered asking her 3 months ago if we were okay. She looked me dead in the eyes and said, "You worry too much." I almost laughed out loud thinking about it now. What happens tonight? I asked. Veronica glanced toward the exit. Mercer leaves first. Your wife waits 5 minutes. Separate departures reduce suspicion. Professional? Very. She lowered her voice slightly. My investigators already have access to hotel security footage, the room reservation, the financial transfers. But what happens tonight matters because tomorrow morning federal warrants become active. I blinked. Tomorrow? The SEC has been building case quietly for almost a year. Mercer doesn't know how close they are. She leaned closer. Your wife doesn't either. A waiter approached our table carefully. Another wine, sir? I almost said no. Then I looked at Samantha again and answered, "Make it whiskey." The waiter nodded and disappeared. Veronica studied me carefully. You're handling this better than most men. No, I said honestly. I'm really not. Because under the numbness, something ugly was growing. Not sadness anymore. Not even heartbreak. Humiliation. That was the poison eating through me now. 10 years married. 2 children together. And my wife had turned me into the loyal idiot waiting at home while another man financed her secret life. Do our kids know him? I asked suddenly. Veronica hesitated half a second too long. Yes. My chest tightened instantly. How? Your wife introduced Mercer as her mentor. I closed my eyes briefly. Our son Caleb was 8. Our daughter Emma had just turned 5. I pictured Mercer standing in my kitchen shaking my hand while sleeping with my wife behind my back. I pictured him smiling at my children. Something inside me went completely cold. Careful, Veronica said quietly. That look gets men arrested. I'm not going to hit him. Good. She paused. Because prison would only punish your children further. The whiskey arrived. I drank half in one swallow. Across the room, Mercer checked his watch. Samantha smiled immediately. Showtime. Veronica's phone vibrated once on the table. She glanced down. They're moving. Mercer stood first. Expensive suit. Perfect posture. The confidence of a man convinced the world belonged to him. Samantha stayed seated exactly as Veronica predicted. Mercer bent down and kissed her softly once more before walking toward the exit. My hands clenched automatically. Veronica placed one finger against the table. Stay seated. Mercer passed within 15 feet of us. He never even looked my direction. Why would he? Men like that never noticed the husbands. 5 minutes later, Samantha stood too. My wife adjusted the black dress I bought her and checked her reflection in her phone camera before leaving to meet another man in a hotel room on our anniversary. The cruelty of that almost impressed me. Veronica stood slowly. It's done. That's it. I asked. That's the beginning. Outside, the restaurant rain had started falling lightly across Richmond streets. Veronica handed me a thick envelope before pulling her coat tighter. Everything I currently have on your wife and Mercer is inside. I looked down at it. Why give this to me? Because tomorrow the government destroys Mercer publicly, she answered. But what your wife did to you, her expression hardened slightly. That deserves a personal ending. A black SUV rolled slowly to the curb beside us. Veronica opened the rear door halfway before stopping. One more thing, Daniel. What? When this breaks tomorrow, your wife is going to panic. She's going to cry. She's going to say she was manipulated. Maybe she was. Maybe she wasn't. Veronica's gray eyes locked onto mine. But remember this. Nobody accidentally betrays someone for 16 straight months. Then she got into the SUV and disappeared into the rainy Richmond night. leaving me standing alone outside Bastian's restaurant, holding proof that my marriage was a lie. I drove home at 11:14 p.m. Samantha still wasn't back yet. Our children were asleep upstairs. The house was quiet except for the grandfather clock in the hallway, ticking steadily like a countdown. I sat alone at the kitchen table under dim lights and opened Veronica's envelope. Photographs, hotel receipts, financial statements, private messages, transfer records, evidence stacked so neatly it looked almost surgical. Then I found the final page. A printed email from Samantha to Mercer sent 6 weeks earlier. I only needed to read one sentence before the blood drained from my face completely. Once the divorce is finalized, Daniel will never see it coming. I stared at those words for a very long time, because suddenly I understood something terrifying. My wife wasn't planning to leave me someday. She was already preparing to destroy me, and I had absolutely no idea how far she was willing to go. The next morning, I called in sick for the first time in 11 years. Not because I was falling apart, because I needed a clear head. Paige left the house at 7:12 a.m. wearing navy heels and the cream trench coat I bought her last fall. She kissed Odette on the forehead, told Rylan she'd be at a soccer game Saturday, then turned to me in the kitchen like nothing had changed, like I hadn't watched her kiss another man, while our anniversary flowers died beside me in a restaurant chair. "You okay?" she asked, pouring coffee into a travel mug. "Didn't sleep much," I said. That part was true. She walked over and touched my arm gently, the same hand that had been resting in Sterling Mercer's hand less than 12 hours earlier. "We'll celebrate this weekend," she said softly. "I promise." Then she smiled. God help me. She smiled exactly the way she smiled when we were dating. Warm, familiar, intimate. The smile that used to make every bad day disappear. And for one terrifying second, I understood how men forgive things they should never forgive. Because memory is dangerous when it wears the face of the person you love most. Then she left. The garage door closed, and the house went silent. I stood there staring at the coffee cup she'd used, thinking about how a human being can split themselves in two. One version kisses her husband goodbye in the kitchen. The other spends anniversaries in hotel rooms with her billionaire boss. At 8:03 a.m., my phone rang. "Mr. Sable," Vivian Hale said. "They're still at the Jefferson." I closed my eyes. "Room 412. "Yes." "You got everything?" "Everything." Her voice stayed calm, professional. "Video entering the hotel at 9:41 p.m. Video, exiting at 7:18 this morning. Overnight valet ticket. Champagne charged the room at 11:06 p.m. Breakfast service at 6:47. Every sentence felt like another nail being driven into the coffin of my marriage. "And Sterling?" I asked. "He's heading to Mercer Gaines right now. Your wife drove separately." "Smart. Careful." They thought about appearances. They thought about being discreet. Affairs aren't just sex. They're logistics. Lies layered on top of schedules and excuses, and deleted messages, and carefully timed arrivals. Cheating is work. That's the part nobody tells you. Vivian paused. I also found something else. My stomach tightened. "What?" "Your wife isn't just sleeping with him." Silence. "What do you mean?" "Sterling Mercer has been preparing to leave the company." I frowned. "He's the CEO." "Exactly. Mercer Gaines Capital is privately owned. Sterling controls most of it, but there's an internal succession issue. 3 senior partners want him out because of previous scandals, spending irregularities, and accusations involving company funds. And Paige, your wife has access to his private accounts, calendars, contracts, emails. She's been helping him move money." The kitchen suddenly felt smaller. Move money where? Offshore accounts. Shell corporations, luxury property purchases hidden through LLCs. She let that settle for a second before continuing. "Mr. Sable, your wife may be involved in federal financial crimes." I laughed once. Short, empty. The sound shocked even me. "You're telling me the woman who reminds our son to brush his teeth every night is laundering money for her boyfriend?" "I'm telling you that love makes intelligent people volunteer for destruction." I sat down slowly at the kitchen table. Across from me was Odette's drawing from preschool, a stick figure family holding hands beneath a giant yellow sun. "Mommy, Daddy, Ryland, Odette, what happens now?" I asked quietly. "That depends on what you want." I looked toward the staircase where my children were still asleep. "I want my kids protected." "Good answer," Vivian said, "because things are about to get ugly." By noon, I was sitting in the office of a divorce attorney named Charles Beckett. Old Richmond family money. White hair, navy suspenders. The kind of man who looked like he billed clients by the minute and enjoyed every second of it. Vivian had sent over the evidence package an hour before I arrived. Beckett flipped through photographs silently. Paige entering the hotel lobby. Paige kissing Sterling outside the valet stand. Paige touching his face in the parking garage. My wife looked happy in every picture. That's what hurt most. Not guilt, not conflict. Happiness. Your PI friend is excellent, Beckett said finally. Former homicide detective. I muttered, that explains the thoroughness. He slid the file shut. Mr. Sable, your wife has made several serious mistakes. Besides the affair, the hidden funds alone are catastrophic in divorce court. But if she's involved in financial misconduct tied to Mercer Gaines, that's another level entirely. Can I protect the kids? He looked at me carefully. Emotionally or legally? Both. Legally, yes. Emotionally, he leaned back slightly. No divorce protects children completely. It just determines how much damage reaches them. I hated him a little for saying that, because it was true. He spent the next hour explaining strategy. Quiet separation planning, asset freezes, temporary custody preparation, digital preservation orders. It sounded less like ending a marriage and more like preparing for war. And maybe that's exactly what divorce really is when betrayal enters the room. Structured warfare with paperwork. Do not confront her yet, Beckett said before I left. Not until we know the full financial exposure. How long? A week? Maybe two. 2 weeks. 2 weeks of pretending to be a husband while building a case against my wife. I drove home numb. That evening, Paige cooked lemon chicken. Ryland talked about baseball practice. Odette spilled juice on the table and laughed so hard she snorted. Paige laughed too. Sterling Mercer probably had no idea my daughter still slept with a stuffed rabbit every night. Probably never wondered whether Ryland was scared of thunderstorms. Men like Sterling don't steal wives because they love families. They steal them because they like winning. Around 9 p.m., Paige came into the garage while I was pretending to organize tools. You've been quiet, she said softly. I kept my back turned. Long week. She stepped closer. Are you mad I missed our anniversary? I almost laughed. Instead, I picked up a wrench and set it back down just to give my hand something to do. Should I be? Aldrich. Her voice lowered. Tender. Careful. Manipulative without even realizing anymore. I know things haven't been perfect lately. Not perfect. That's what cheaters call betrayal. Imperfection. Like infidelity is just another marriage inconvenience beside dirty laundry and unpaid electric bills. She touched my shoulder. I love you. There it was. The sentence. For words that used to mean safety. Home. Truth. Now, they sounded like counterfeit money. I turned and looked at her fully for the first time since the restaurant. Beautiful. Blonde hair loose over one shoulder. Bare feet against the concrete garage floor. My wife. A stranger wearing my wife's face. Do you? I asked quietly. Something flickered in her eyes then. Fear maybe. Tiny. Fast. But there. Because liars always know the exact moment someone stops believing them. What does that mean? She asked carefully. I held her gaze for 3 long seconds. Then I smiled. Nothing. She studied me another moment before nodding slowly. Okay. But as she walked back inside, I saw in the stiffness of her shoulders. Paige Sable finally understood something had changed. And upstairs in our bedroom later that night, while she slept beside me breathing soft and steady, I stared at the ceiling and realized something terrifying. I wasn't heartbroken anymore. I was becoming patient. And patient men are dangerous.